I married a man named William Anderson, the most sought-after millionaire CEO in the city, and for 3 years he treated me like I was invisible. In those 3 years, we had barely exchanged 50 words. I was just part of an arrangement I didn't fully understand. My humble family needed money, and the Anderson family needed William to marry. That was it. I went downstairs to the kitchen at 6 o'clock every morning. William always had breakfast at 6:15, so I had 15 minutes to eat and disappear. That was my quiet, painful routine every day. But that morning, something was different. William was already coming down the stairs. I quickly stood up to leave, but this time something unusual happened. "Emily." His cold voice made me freeze in the doorway. I turned around slowly. He was standing there looking sharp in his perfect suit, his piercing blue eyes locked on me. It was the first time in months he had said my name. "Yes," I answered, trying to hide the surprise in my voice. "Do you have something suitable to wear to a corporate event?" He asked flatly, like he was talking to an employee. I blinked, confused. "I don't understand. It's a simple question. Do you have a dress appropriate to accompany the CEO of Anderson Enterprises to a gala dinner?" My heart started to race. In 3 years, I had never appeared in public with him, not even once. "Why are you asking me that?" I asked, finding a bit of courage I didn't know I had. William studied me for a moment as if he was seeing me for the first time. "Because you're coming with me tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. "But why?" "You never..." "Business reasons." He cut me off coldly. "I need to appear as a stable family man. You are my wife, at least on paper." The words hit like knives. I felt my face flush with humiliation, but I held my head high. "Hi. And if I don't want to go?" William raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by my resistance. "That's not an option, Emily. It's a duty." "Duty?" I repeated the word with bitterness. Like everything else in my life, right? For a moment, something flickered across William's face. It almost looked like regret, but it was gone so fast that I thought I imagined it. "This event is important. International investors, million-dollar contracts. You need to look presentable." I lifted my chin with pride. "Presentable? You don't even know who I am, William. In 3 years, you never bothered to find out." "I know enough." "You do?" I stepped closer, my eyes glowing with defiance. "Then tell me, what's my favorite color? What did I study? What do I do during the long hours you ignore me in this house?" William stayed silent, clearly uncomfortable. "That's what I thought," I sighed. "I'll go to your event, Mr. Anderson, but not because it's a duty. I'll go because after 3 years of being invisible, I'm curious to see this world you chose over me." I walked past him. Leaving the kitchen with my head held high, William stood there, watching me go up the stairs, and for the first time in 3 years, he truly saw me, the woman he had married. I had a graceful presence, even in simple clothes. There was strength in my movements, dignity in the way I carried myself. How had he never noticed that before? Upstairs, I sat on the bed, my heart racing. Tomorrow night, for the first time in 3 years, I would be seen publicly as Emily Anderson. The question was I ready for what that might bring? Downstairs, William remained in the kitchen, feeling something strange in his chest. Why did my reaction affect him so deeply all of a sudden? I looked at myself in the mirror for the 10th time. The navy blue dress I had chosen was simple but elegant, the only one I owned that could work for a formal event. I had bought it years ago before the marriage, when I still had hope for a normal social life. At exactly 7 o'clock, I came down the stairs. William was waiting in the living room, flawless in his black tuxedo. When he saw me, he paused for a moment as if something about me had caught him off guard. "You look appropriate." That was all he said, but I noticed his eyes lingered on me longer than they needed to. The car took us to the Grand Beverly Hotel. During the whole ride, we stayed silent. I looked out the window, nervous, 3 years hidden. And now I would be introduced as the wife of the most powerful CEO in Los Angeles. "Remember," William said as we arrived, "you are Emily Anderson. Smile, be polite, and don't talk about business." "Got it." Be a pretty decoration and stay quiet, I replied sarcastically. William glanced at me quickly, something like amusement flashing in his eyes for just a second. The room was filled with important people, businessmen, investors, socialites. I felt like a walking fraud, but I held the elegant posture I had learned by watching my mother-in-law on rare occasions. William, a tall, charming man, approached. I finally get to meet the mysterious wife. Richard Thompson, William said formally. My wife, Emily. Richard took my hand and kissed it politely. It's a real pleasure, Emily. I'm an international investor. I work with European markets. The pleasure is mine, I replied naturally, smiling. Your wife is delightful, William, and much more beautiful than the photos do her justice. I was puzzled. What photos? I had never posed for any pictures as William's wife. Do you speak any other languages, Emily? Richard asked, clearly interested. Yes, I speak French and Spanish fluently. Richard's eyes lit up. Magnifique. I've been looking for someone to help with a few contracts in South America. Would you be interested? William cut in sharply. Emily doesn't work. What a waste, Richard said, still looking at me. A smart and beautiful woman should use her talents. I felt a wave of gratitude. Finally, someone saw I had more to offer than just being decorative. I'd love to help, I said, ignoring William's warning look. Perfect. How about dinner tomorrow to go over the details? Richard suggested. She's busy, William replied coldly. Actually, I'm not, I said, looking directly at William. I'd be happy to have dinner with you, Mr. Thompson. Richard smiled broadly. Excellent. I'll pick you up at 8. As Richard walked away, William grabbed my arm harder than necessary. What do you think you're doing? He hissed. Having a civilized conversation, something you might want to try. You're not having dinner with him. I pulled away abruptly. And why not? You said it yourself. I'm only your wife on paper, and on paper, I can do what I want. William stared at me, something dangerous in his eyes. You're my wife. Since when has that mattered to you? For the rest of the evening, I noticed that William didn't leave my side, not even for a moment. Every time Richard came near, William showed up like a possessive bodyguard. It was strange and confusing. In the car on the way home, the tension was thick. You're not having dinner with him, William said again. Yes, I am, I replied calmly. Why? Just to get under my skin? I turned to face him. To remind myself that I'm a real person, William. Someone with a mind, skills, value. Something you've completely forgotten. I haven't forgotten anything. No? Then tell me, when was the last time you really saw me? Not as an object or an obligation, but as a person. William stayed silent, but I could see the tension in his jaw. That's what I thought. I murmured. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom. But before going in, I turned to William, who was still standing in the hallway. Thanks for tonight. It was eye-opening. Emily. His voice made me pause. Yes? William hesitated like he was about to say something important, but then shook his head. Nothing. Good night. I entered the room but couldn't sleep. For the first time in 3 years, I had seen something different in William: jealousy, possessiveness, whatever it was. It had clearly gotten to him in a way nothing else ever had. Across the hall, William was still awake, pacing. The image of Richard looking at me, touching my hand, making me smile, was burned into his mind. And worst of all, he had felt an irrational fury, a primitive urge to push any man away from his wife. His wife. When had I actually become his wife in his mind, and not just a family obligation? William stopped at the window, confused by his own emotions. In one night, I had shaken 3 years of carefully built indifference. William woke up at 5 a.m. like always, but this time he couldn't go back to sleep. The image of Richard Thompson looking at me, touching my hand, making me smile. It was burned into his mind like a hot brand. He got up and walked to the window. 3 years. 3 years of living with me under the same roof. And he had never felt this strange, unsettling feeling in his chest. It was like something primal had awakened inside him, something he couldn't control or understand. Why on earth did he care if another man was interested in me? He went down to the kitchen earlier than usual. 6 o'clock. To his surprise, I was already there, sitting at the counter with a cup of coffee, looking out the window. I was wearing a simple robe, my hair falling loosely over my shoulders. William stopped at the doorway, really noticing me for the first time. How had he never realized I was beautiful? Not just presentable, like he had said yesterday, but truly beautiful. There was something about my profile, the gentle curve of my neck, the way the morning light lit up my face. "You're staring at me," I said without turning around, startling him. William cleared his throat, embarrassed to be caught. "Just checking if you're ready to cancel tonight's dinner." I turned to face him and William felt a strange twist in his stomach when our eyes met. "I'm not canceling." "Why not? What does this man have to offer that's so important?" It tilted my head, studying him with curiosity. Attention, respect, the feeling that I matter. My words cut deeper than William expected. He stepped closer to the counter, standing nearer to me than he had in years. "You matter to you?" I asked, my eyes shining with challenge. "Really?" Because until last night, I might as well have been a ghost. William couldn't answer. Because I was right. He had completely ignored me, treated me like part of the furniture. But now, looking at me, he couldn't understand how he had been so blind. "Why are you looking at me like that?" I asked, my voice softer now, almost a whisper. "Like what?" "Like you're seeing me for the first time." William swallowed hard. "Maybe I am." The silence between us grew heavy, filled with something neither of us could name. I felt my heart beating faster. There was something different in William's eyes, an intensity I'd never seen before. "William," I began, but he cut me off. "Cancel the dinner." "Why?" I stood up now, face to face with him. "Give me a real reason." William struggled with the words. How could he explain that the idea of another man touching me, smiling at me, making me laugh, was driving him crazy? How could he admit that suddenly he cared after 3 years of pretending I didn't exist? "Because you're my wife," was all he managed to say. "On paper," I replied, though something had changed in my voice too. "On paper," William repeated, but his eyes said something completely different. We stood there for a moment, staring at each other, the tension between us like static in the air. I could feel the warmth of his body, the scent of his expensive cologne mixed with something purely masculine. "You've changed," I murmured. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday, you barely remembered my name. Today, you're different." William ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. I don't know what's happening to me. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. It was the first time I had seen him vulnerable, confused, human. "What did you feel last night when Richard was talking to me?" William looked at me for a long moment. Anger and irrational anger seeing him look at you like that. Jealousy? The word hung in the air between us. William didn't answer, but the look in his eyes gave him away. "Why?" I pressed. "Why do you suddenly care?" "I don't know." William burst out, stepping away from me. "I don't know why I suddenly can't get you out of my head. I don't know why the thought of you having dinner with another man is driving me insane." I was shocked by the passion in his voice. 3 years of coldness and now this. "William, you want the truth?" He turned back to me, eyes shining with intensity. "I spent the whole night thinking about how I've never really looked at you. About how I've been a fool for 3 years. About how another man saw in one night what I was blind to for 3 years." My heart pounded. "And what did he see?" William stepped closer again, his eyes moving over my face like he was trying to memorize every detail. "A smart woman. Beautiful, strong, someone who deserves to be appreciated, not ignored." I felt tears sting my eyes. 3 years, William. I waited 3 years for any sign that you saw me as more than a burden. I know, and I hate myself for it. Then why now? Why only now? William hesitated, then said the hardest truth he had. Because seeing another man want you made me realize that I want you too. And that terrifies me. The words hung in the air between us, changing everything. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. I'm still having dinner with Richard tonight, I said, but my voice trembled. Why? I lifted my chin with determination. You had 3 years to notice me, William. 3 years to treat me like your real wife. You can't expect me to drop everything just because you finally decided I exist. With that, I walked past him and went upstairs, leaving William alone in the kitchen, more confused and unsettled than he had ever been in his life. Upstairs, I leaned against the bedroom door, my heart pounding. Everything had changed in just one morning. The question was, what would I do with this change? I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. I had chosen an emerald green dress that brought out my eyes, something I had kept for years, waiting for a special occasion. Today, I felt like I deserved to feel beautiful, to feel seen. It was 8 o'clock in the evening when the doorbell rang. Richard was right on time, just as he had promised. I came down the stairs with Grace, carrying a small black purse. I didn't see William anywhere. He was probably locked in his office as usual. Emily, you look stunning, Richard said as he saw me, offering his arm like a true gentleman. Thank you, Richard. I'm looking forward to our conversation. What I didn't know was that William was watching from his office window, his hands clenched into fists as he saw another man take me out. The anger he felt was irrational, primal, and completely unfamiliar to him. Richard took me to one of the most exclusive restaurants in Beverly Hills. The setting was elegant with soft lighting and classical music playing in the background. I felt like I had been transported to a world I had almost forgotten, a world where I was treated like a lady, not like someone invisible. So, Emily, Richard began after we ordered dinner. Tell me about yourself. William doesn't talk much about his personal life. I gave a small, sad smile. There's not much to tell. At least nothing William would know. What do you mean? Well, I paused, then decided to be honest. My husband and I were not exactly close. This is probably the first social dinner I've had in 3 years. Richard raised his eyebrows, surprised. That's hard to believe. A woman like you should be at every event in town. I gave a soft laugh. You're very kind, but the truth is William prefers to keep our lives separate. What a shame, Richard murmured. Tell me about your background. Yesterday, you mentioned you speak languages. My eyes lit up. Finally, someone interested in who I really was. I have a degree in business administration from UCLA. I speak French, Spanish, and Italian fluently. Before I got married, I worked for an international consulting firm. Richard leaned in, clearly impressed. That's amazing. What was your area of expertise? Emerging markets and international negotiations. I helped American companies expand into Latin America. My goodness, Emily, you're exactly the kind of person I need for my projects in Argentina and Chile. I've got mining contracts that require someone with your knowledge. I felt a wave of satisfaction. How long had it been since I felt useful, valued for my skills? It would be wonderful to work again, I admitted. I miss using my mind for something meaningful. At that moment, I noticed a familiar figure entering the restaurant. My blood ran cold. It was William. He looked impeccable in a dark suit, but his expression was stormy. His blue eyes scanned the room until they landed on me, and I felt a chill when I saw the intensity in his gaze. Emily. William's deep voice cut into the conversation as he approached our table. Richard stood politely. William, what a surprise to see you here. I'm sure it is, William replied coldly, his eyes locked on me. May I speak with my wife for a moment? Of course, Richard said, confused by the tension in the air. I'll step out for a minute. As soon as Richard walked away, William sat in the empty chair, never taking his eyes off me. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The question is, what are you doing here? Having dinner like I said I would. William looked around the romantic setting, the candles, the soft music, the intimate atmosphere. This doesn't look like a business dinner. I lifted my chin defiantly. And how would you know? You've never taken me out to dinner. The words hit William like a punch. It was true. In 3 years of marriage, he had never taken me on a date, never shared a romantic meal with me. Emily, William began, his voice lower now. I didn't know you had a degree in business. I blinked, surprised. How do you know that? I heard you two talking. You were spying on us? William had the decency to look embarrassed. Yes. And I realized there's a lot about you I never knew. 3 years, William, I said, my voice full of hurt. You had 3 years to ask, to care. You speak 3 languages, William continued as if listing discoveries. You worked in international consulting. You're an expert in emerging markets. And that surprises you? Completely, William admitted. I thought you were just what? A simple girl your family picked out for you? A burden you had to carry? William stayed silent because that's exactly what he had thought. You never took the time to find out who I really am, I went on, my voice rising. You never asked about my dreams, my ambitions, my fears. To you, I was just an inconvenient obligation. Emily, no. I cut him off. You don't get to show up now after 3 years of ignoring me and act like you suddenly care. William leaned forward, his eyes shining with something I couldn't quite identify. But I do care more than I should, more than I understand. Why? Because another man showed interest? Because you finally realized you might be losing something valuable? Yes, William admitted harshly. Exactly that. The brutal honesty of his answer left me speechless for a moment. At least you're honest, I murmured. Richard came back to the table, clearly sensing the tension. Everything all right here? William stood up, but his eyes stayed on me. Just saying goodbye. Emily, I expect to see you at home later. It wasn't a request. It sounded almost like a command spoken with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. I felt a mix of irritation and something else, something that made my heart beat faster. Maybe, I replied, keeping my dignity. William paused for a moment as if he wanted to say more, then turned and left the restaurant, leaving me slightly trembling. Well, Richard said, sitting down again. That was intense. Your husband seemed possessive. I let out a humorless laugh. 3 years of indifference and now possessiveness. Men are strange creatures. Emily, Richard said gently. May I say something? Of course. I saw the way he looked at you. It wasn't just possessiveness. It was desire. Plain and simple. I felt my face flush. You're imagining things. No, I'm not. And I also saw the way you looked at him. There's history between you two. Complicated and unresolved. I sighed. It's a long story. The best ones always are, Richard said with a knowing smile. But may I say something else? Any man who ignores a woman like you for 3 years is a fool. But a man who finally realizes what he has, well, he might be dangerously determined not to lose it again. The rest of the dinner passed with pleasant conversation about business and opportunities. But I couldn't get William out of my mind. The way he had looked at me, the intensity in his voice, the raw admission that he cared. By the time Richard brought me home, it was past 11 at night. Thank you for a wonderful evening, I said sincerely. It's been a long time since I felt this good. The pleasure was mine, and about the job offer, please consider it seriously. You'd be a perfect fit for my team. I nodded as Richard drove away, then turned to face the mansion. All the lights were off except one William's office. He was waiting for me. I entered quietly, but I knew I wouldn't be able to avoid the conversation waiting for us. 3 years of silence had been broken, and there was no going back. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step echoing in the quiet house. As I passed the office, the door opened. Emily? I stopped but didn't turn around. We need to talk, William said. I finally turned to face him. Now you want to talk after 3 years? Yes, now. There was something in his voice that made me pause, a vulnerability I'd never heard before. All right, I said at last. Let's talk. I walked into William's office, my nerves on edge. The room was classically masculine, dark wood shelves, leather chairs, and a large desk where William spent most of his nights. He was standing by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city lights. So, I said, crossing my arms. You wanted to talk. William turned slowly to face me. I want to understand. Understand what? You, us, how we ended up here? I laughed bitterly. 3 years, William. You had 3 years to understand anything about me. I know, and I admit I'd been neglectful. Neglectful? I repeated in disbelief. You treated me like I was invisible. William ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. I didn't know how to act. This marriage, it wasn't my choice. It wasn't mine either. I shot back quickly. We looked at each other for a moment, the weight of 3 years of silence between us. Why did you agree to it? William finally asked. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. You really don't know. I know there was some kind of arrangement between the families, but I never asked for details. Of course you didn't ask, I murmured. Why would you? You were getting a quiet, convenient wife. Emily, please help me understand. I looked at him for a long moment, then sat down in one of the armchairs. The conversation we had avoided for 3 years was finally going to happen. You want the truth? I said, my voice softer. The truth about why a girl from a humble background married the almighty CEO William Anderson. William sat in the chair across from me, his eyes fixed on mine. Yes, I want to know everything. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the memories come back. 3 years ago, I was sitting at the kitchen table in the modest house where I had grown up in a small town 2 hours from Los Angeles. My mother, Sarah, looked nervous, her hands shaking as she flipped through some papers. My father, David, was pacing back and forth, his face tight with worry. Mom, what's going on? I asked, watching them with growing anxiety. Sarah exchanged a meaningful glance with David before letting out a deep sigh. Emily, sweetheart, we need to talk to you about something very important. You're scaring me. David stopped pacing and sat heavily in the chair next to me. Emily, our business is in serious financial trouble. I blinked, confused. My parents' small accounting firm had always been stable, modest, but enough to support us. What kind of trouble? Debt, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. A lot of it. We invested everything in expansion that didn't work out. How much? David swallowed hard. $2 million. I felt my blood run cold. 2 million? How is that even possible? We made bad partnerships, risky investments. We trusted the wrong people, David explained, guilt heavy in his voice. What now? Now, Sarah continued. We're going to lose everything. The business, the house, our savings. Your father could even face criminal charges. I felt like the world was collapsing around me. There has to be something we can do, a bank, an investor. There is, David said slowly. There is one possibility. What is it? Sarah took my hand. The Anderson family. They've been our clients for years. The patriarch, Robert Anderson, made us an offer. What kind of offer? David hesitated. They'll pay off all our debts and give us a fresh start. In exchange? In exchange for what? In exchange for you marrying their son, William. I was silent for a long moment, trying to process the words. You're serious. Emily, Sarah said, tears in her eyes. I know how this sounds, but it's our only option. You want me to sell myself? Literally, it's not like that, David protested. The Andersons are a respected, wealthy family. William is young, successful. You'd have a good life. A life I didn't choose. Emily, please, Sarah pleaded. If we don't accept, we lose everything. Your father could go to jail. I stood up abruptly, walking to the window. My future was being decided by debts and business deals. What if I say no? The silence that followed was my answer. You already said yes, didn't you? I said, turning to face my parents. You've already agreed to it. We needed a quick decision. David admitted. The creditors were closing in. I felt a mix of anger and despair. What about what I want, my dreams, my plans? You can keep studying, working. It's just an arrangement. An arrangement? I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. You sold your daughter for $2 million. Emily, it's not like... It's exactly like that, I exploded. You turned me into a transaction. I ran to my room and locked the door. For hours, I cried, caught between fury and hopelessness. How had my life come to this? Days later, I met William for the first time. The meeting was formal, cold, more like a business meeting. He was handsome, polished, but distant. He treated me with professional courtesy as if we were finalizing a contract. I hope you understand, William said during that first meeting. This is a mutually beneficial arrangement between our families. I expect nothing more than discretion and the occasional public appearance. I had swallowed my pride and agreed. What choice did I have? Back to the present. I opened my eyes to find William watching me closely. So now you know, I said, my voice rough with emotion. Your parents saved my family from ruin, and I was the price. William was silent for a long moment, taking in the story. I didn't know the details, he finally said. Of course not. Why would you care? You got a convenient wife who wouldn't interfere with your life. I saved my family from jail and poverty. Everyone won't accept me. Accept you? Accept me, I confirmed. I lost my freedom, my dreams, my dignity, all for $2 million. William stood and walked over to me, stopping just a few steps away. Emily, I didn't realize how much it cost you. How could you? You never asked. In 3 years, you never once showed any interest in how I felt or what I wanted. And what did you want? I looked at him, surprised by the question. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for what I represented financially. I wanted a real marriage, not a business deal. I wanted to feel valued, not like a burden you had to carry. William knelt down in front of my chair, his blue eyes intense. And now, what do you want now? I felt tears sting my eyes. Now? Now I'm not sure anymore. 3 years of being ignored changed me. I got used to feeling invisible, to expecting nothing. But last night with Richard, last night reminded me what it feels like to be seen, to be appreciated. It was scary and wonderful. William reached out, hesitating before touching my face. Emily, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but give me a chance. A chance for what? To start over. To get to know the woman I married. To try and build something real between us. I looked at him, and for the first time I saw vulnerability in his eyes. Why now, William? Why try after 3 years? Because I finally see what I've lost. Because I realized I have an extraordinary wife and I was too blind to see it. Because the thought of you with another man drives me crazy. I felt my heart race, but the pain of those 3 years still weighed heavily on me. I need time, I said at last. 3 years of hurt don't heal overnight. William nodded and lowered his hand. I understand. But Emily, yes? I'm going to fight for you, for us. Even if it takes time, even if it's hard, I won't give up. I stood, feeling emotionally drained. Good night, William. Good night, Emily. As I left the study, William was left alone with the weight of all he had just learned. 3 years wasted. An extraordinary woman ignored. A marriage that could have been real if he hadn't been so blind and arrogant, but now he knew the truth. And he was determined to win the heart of the woman who was his wife on paper, but who needed to truly become his in life. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee coming from the kitchen. Strange. William always left before I woke up. I came downstairs curious and found a scene that left me completely stunned. William was in the kitchen, not just having coffee, but making breakfast. There were pancakes on the stove, fresh fruit on a plate, and 2 steaming mugs of coffee on the counter. Good morning, he said, turning when he heard me come in. He was dressed casually, jeans and a button-down shirt with no tie, something I had never seen him wear. Good morning, I replied cautiously. What's going on? Breakfast, William said simply, flipping the pancakes with a surprising amount of skill. You know how to cook? I learned in college. Nothing fancy, but it's edible. I stayed in the doorway, watching him with suspicion. Why are you doing this? William turned off the stove and faced me fully. Because I want to start over for real this time. William, sit down, he said, gesturing to the counter where he had set 2 places. Please. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. I sat down, watching as he served the warm pancakes. Thank you, I murmured, still trying to process the surreal moment of having breakfast with my husband for the first time in 3 years. How did you sleep? William asked, sitting beside me. I almost choked on my coffee. Excuse me? Sleep? How was your night? You're actually asking how I slept? William paused, realizing how strange such a simple question sounded between us. Yes, I am, and I plan to keep asking every day. I studied his face, looking for any sign that this was some kind of game or manipulation. Why? Because we're married, Emily, and I want us to really be married. 3 years, William, you had 3 years to decide that. I know, and I deeply regret every day I wasted. I ate in silence for a few moments, the taste of the pancakes overshadowed by the confusion in my mind. And what if I say it's too late? I finally asked. William set his fork down and turned fully to face me. Then I'll prove you wrong. The intensity in his voice sent a chill down my spine. How? By showing you every single day what kind of husband I can be. What kind of man I can be for you. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You can't just decide now that you want to be a real husband and expect me to go along with it like nothing happened. William stood as well, but kept his voice calm. I don't expect you to go along with it. I hope you'll give me the chance to earn it. Earn it? I gave a short, bitter laugh. I'm not a prize to be won, William. No, you're not, he agreed, taking a step toward me. You're my wife, and I was a fool for not valuing that from the beginning. I stepped back but found myself pinned against the counter. You're confusing me, I admitted, my voice softer. 3 years of coldness and now this. I don't know what to believe. William took another step, now dangerously close. Believe this, he said, his voice low. Believe that I've finally woken up, that I finally saw what was right in front of me? I could feel the heat radiating from his body, the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something purely masculine. William, I began, but he interrupted. Cancel Richard. What? The job he offered you, turn it down. I gently pushed him back, creating space between us. Why would I do that? Because I want you to work with me. Work with you? At Anderson Enterprises? You're an expert in emerging markets. We've got projects in Latin America that need exactly your kind of expertise. I stared at him, stunned. You're offering me a job? I'm offering a partnership, professional and personal. This is insane. It's an opportunity. I shook my head and walked away from him. I don't understand what's going on with you. William followed, but kept a respectful distance. What's going on is, I finally realized I've ignored the most extraordinary woman I've ever met, and now I want to make it right. How can I trust this isn't just a phase? That. Tomorrow you won't go back to ignoring me? William stopped walking, and I turned to face him. Because, he said, his blue eyes filled with determination, I can't go back to ignoring you. Last night, watching you have dinner with another man, I realized it would be impossible to pretend you don't exist. Why last night? What changed specifically last night? William hesitated, then chose to be completely honest. Jealousy pure and simple. Seeing another man look at you, touch your hand, make you smile, it drove me crazy, and it made me realize that you're not just my wife on paper. You're mine. The words hung in the air between us. I felt something stir in my chest, a mix of anger, pain, and something more dangerous. Yours? I repeated, my voice low and sharp. Mine, William confirmed, stepping toward me again. I'm not your property, William Anderson. No, you're not, he agreed. But you are my wife, and I want you to be my wife in every sense of the word. I felt my heart race. There was something in the way he looked at me, an intensity I'd never seen before that was doing strange things to my body. And if I don't want to? I challenged. William gave me a slow, almost dangerous smile that made butterflies stir in my stomach. Then I'll just have to change your mind. How? Instead of answering, William took another step, now close enough that I could see the tiny golden flecks in his blue eyes. Starting with this, he whispered, raising his hand to gently touch my face. I should have stepped back. I should have said something. But his touch was surprisingly gentle, and I had spent 3 years being ignored, 3 years feeling invisible. William, I whispered, but didn't move away. Tell me to stop, he said, his thumb softly tracing my cheek. I knew I should. I knew this was playing with fire, but the words wouldn't come. You're playing with me, I finally managed. I'm not playing, William replied seriously. I've never been more serious in my life. We stood like that for a moment, looking at each other, the tension between us growing like electricity in the air. It was I who finally stepped back, putting some space between us. I need time to think, I said, my voice shaky. How long? I don't know, days, weeks. You don't just erase 3 years that easily. William nodded, but he didn't look discouraged. All right, but while you're thinking, I'm going to keep showing you the kind of husband I can be. William. Yes, I'm not giving up, not this time. With that, he walked out of the kitchen, leaving me alone, my heart pounding and my mind a complete mess. Later that day, I found flowers in my room, white roses with a simple card. To new beginnings. At lunchtime, William showed up at home, something he had never done before, carrying Thai food from a restaurant I had mentioned liking years ago. How did he even remember that? That evening, instead of locking himself in his office, William invited me to watch a movie in the living room. I said no, but I noticed he left the door open and the volume low, as if hoping I might change my mind. For 3 days, the pattern continued. William completely changed his routine around me. Breakfast together, lunches at home, dinners where he actually talked to me about my day. I felt confused, cautious, but also curious. It was like I was getting to know a completely different version of the man I had married. He's really trying, I whispered to myself on the 3rd night, watching William in the living room reading a book instead of working on his laptop. The question was I willing to give him the chance he was asking for? And more importantly, was I willing to risk my heart again? A week had passed since William began his efforts to win me back. I was still holding back, but I had started to notice little changes in myself, looking forward to breakfast, wondering what we'd talk about over dinner, and catching myself watching him when he wasn't looking. That Friday morning, I was in the garden reading when Mrs. Thompson came over with the cordless phone. Mrs. Anderson, there's a man named Richard Thompson on the line. He says it's about business. I felt a small wave of anxiety. I hadn't spoken to Richard in a week since that dinner that had changed everything between William and me. Hello, Richard. Emily, it's so good to hear your voice. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. And you? Great. Listen, I'm calling because I need an answer about our job offer. I've got meetings in New York next week, and I'd really love to have you on the team. I hesitated. Over the past few days, William had mentioned more than once the possibility of me working at Anderson Enterprises, but I hadn't given a final answer. Richard, I'm still considering my options. Of course, I understand. How about we meet today to talk about it? I can swing by and pick you up, maybe lunch to go over the details. I looked toward the house. William was in an important meeting and wasn't expected back until the evening. All right, what time? Noon. Perfect. See you soon, Emily. I hung up the phone, unaware that William had come home early and overheard part of the conversation from his office window. William climbed the stairs with heavy steps, a familiar anger rising in his chest. Richard Thompson again. That man was becoming a persistent problem. All week, William had been doing everything he could to win me back. He had changed his entire routine, canceled important meetings just to be home. done everything possible to show me what kind of husband he could be. And now Richard was back to complicate everything. At 11:30, William watched through the window as I got ready. I had chosen a yellow dress that made my skin glow, my hair down in soft waves. I looked beautiful, and that only made his irritation worse. When Richard's car arrived, William made an impulsive decision. He grabbed his Porsche keys and followed us. Richard took me to a fancy restaurant in the center of Beverly Hills. The setting was elegant, but not intimate like the first time, which I appreciated. "So," Richard said after we ordered, "tell me what's going on. You sounded different on the phone." I sighed. Things at home are complicated with William. He's changing, or at least pretending to. Richard leaned forward, interested. "What do you mean?" "He's decided he wants to be a real husband now. He's doing everything he can to win me over." "And that's a bad thing?" I picked at my food, distracted. "I don't know. 3 years of indifference don't just disappear in 1 week." "But are you thinking about giving him a chance?" "I'm confused," I admitted. Part of me wants to believe he's really changed. But the part that was ignored for 3 years is afraid it's just a phase. Richard reached across the table and gently covered my hand with his. "Emily, can I be honest with you?" "Of course." "You deserve more than scraps of attention when it suits him. You deserve someone who values you from the very beginning." I looked down at our hands, touched by Richard's sincerity. "Thank you. That means a lot to me. That's why my offer still stands. Work with me. Be independent. You don't need to rely on his moods to decide your future." Just then, I saw a familiar figure walk into the restaurant. My blood ran cold. William. He walked straight over to our table, his face a mask of controlled coldness. "What a coincidence finding you two here," William said, his voice dangerously calm. Richard let go of my hand and stood up politely. "William, what a surprise." "I'm sure," William replied, his eyes fixed on Richard's hand, still close to mine. "William," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "Having lunch." "Just like you, apparently." The tension at the table was obvious. Other customers had started to glance our way. "Why don't you join us?" Richard offered, clearly trying to ease the situation. "How kind," William replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down without waiting for a real invitation. I stared at him, stunned by his boldness. "Actually," I said, "we were having a private conversation." "About business, I assume," William said, his eyes never leaving my face. "Yes," Richard confirmed. "I'm trying to convince Emily to accept my job offer." "How interesting," William said, his tone making it clear he found it anything but interesting. "And what kind of job is that?" I felt my anger rise. "The kind that lets me use my education and skills, something you never cared to learn about." William turned to me, something sharp in his gaze. "I did offer you a position at Anderson Enterprises." "As a favor," I shot back. "Richard offered because he sees my professional value." "I'm sure he sees plenty of things in you," William said, his voice full of insinuation. Richard cleared his throat awkwardly. "Maybe I should give you two some privacy." "No," I said quickly. "You don't have to go anywhere." William stood up abruptly. "Actually, he does." "Excuse me?" Richard asked. "You need to stop chasing after my wife." I stood too, my face flushed with anger. "Chasing?" "He's offering me a professional opportunity. He's offering more than that, and we all know it." Richard stood as well, clearly offended. "William, I think you're misunderstanding." "Am I?" William turned to Richard, his posture intimidating. "You don't think I notice how you look at her? How you find excuses to touch her?" "William," I hissed, horrified. "It's true," William said, his voice rising. "He's interested in you, Emily, and you're enjoying the attention." I felt like I'd been slapped. "How dare you?" "I dare because I'm your husband. On paper?" I shouted. "Only on paper." The whole restaurant was now staring at us. Richard placed some money on the table. I think I'd better go, he said quietly. Emily, call me when you decide about the offer. He left quickly, leaving William and me staring at each other in the awkward silence. Congratulations, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You just publicly humiliated me. You humiliated yourself by letting him touch you like that. I took a step closer, my eyes blazing. Who do you think you are? You ignored me for 3 years. And now you act like you have some kind of right over me. I do have rights over you. No, you don't, I shouted, not caring about the people watching. You gave up those rights the moment you started treating me like I didn't exist. William grabbed my arm, not roughly but firmly. Let's go. Let go of me. Everyone's staring. I don't care. Let them stare. But William was already guiding me out of the restaurant, his hands steady on my back in the parking lot. Away from the curious eyes, I yanked my arm free. How dare you? I shouted. How dare you follow me and embarrass me like that? I couldn't help it. Couldn't help what? Seeing you with him. Seeing another man touch you, look at you like what? Like he wants you, William burst out. I stopped shouting, stunned by the intensity in his voice. So what if he wants me? I asked, my voice lower now, but still full of challenge. William took a step closer, his blue eyes burning with something raw and primal. So what? He repeated. Emily, you're my wife. Then act like my husband. That's what I'm trying to do. By following me, embarrassing me, acting like you own me. William ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a real husband. I never learned. The raw honesty in his voice caught me by surprise. I too was startled by the vulnerability in his tone. Then learn, I said, my voice calmer now. But not like this. William looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made me forget to breathe for a second. Emily, he said, his voice rough. You have no idea what you're doing to me. What do you mean? William took another step closer, so close I could feel the warmth of his body. I mean, you're driving me crazy, completely out of my mind. My heart began to race. There was something in the way he looked at me, an intensity that stirred feelings I hadn't felt in a long time. William, you have power over me, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. A power I don't understand. A power I can't control. I really looked at him, and for the first time I didn't see the cold, in-control CEO. I saw a man who was lost, confused and deeply in love. Power? I repeated. To make me feel jealous, to make me lose control, to make me want things I didn't even know I wanted. I felt a strange wave of satisfaction. After 3 years of feeling invisible, realizing I had that kind of effect on him was intoxicating. And what do you want? I asked, my voice softer now. William looked at me for a long moment before answering. You, Emily. I want you. His words hung in the air between us in the parking lot. I felt like the world stopped for just a moment. 3 years of marriage, and it was the first time he'd said those words with that much honesty, with that much feeling. William, I began, but he shook his head. Don't say anything now. Just think about what I said. We drove home in separate cars, the tension between us still thick in the air. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my room, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. His words echoed in my mind. I want you. It wasn't just physical desire I'd heard in his voice. It was something deeper, something desperate. The next morning, I came downstairs for breakfast, expecting to see William. But he was already gone. Mrs. Thompson told me he'd left early for a business meeting that would take all day. I felt an unexpected wave of disappointment. I'd gotten used to having breakfast with him, to his steady attention. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my phone rang. It was Richard. Emily, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to apologize for what happened yesterday. Richard, you don't need to apologize. I should be the one apologizing for William's behavior. Can I be honest with you? Of course. He's in love with you. Completely gone. I know the signs. My heart skipped a beat. You think so? I'm sure of it. The question is, how do you feel about it? I was quiet for a moment, confused. 3 years, Richard, 3 years of distance. And now I don't know. He's different. Really different. Emily, may I suggest something? Yes. Why don't you have dinner with me tonight? Just as friends. William can come too if he wants. Maybe it'll help all of us clear the air. I hesitated. I don't know if that's a good idea. I'll be at Giovanni's at 8. If you change your mind, just send me a message. At 7, I was getting ready when I heard William's Porsche pull into the driveway. My heart jumped. I had decided to go to dinner with Richard, but now I wasn't sure it was the right choice. I walked downstairs in an elegant black dress, determined to keep my independence. William was in the living room, still in his suit, but without the tie. When he saw me, he stopped in his tracks. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you." Heading out, I took a deep breath. I'm going to have dinner with Richard. William didn't move for a moment, then he nodded slowly. I see. You understand? You're testing me, William said, his eyes locked on mine. You want to see if I'll lose control again? I was caught off guard by how perceptive he was. And will you? William walked up to me, stopping just a breath away. Yes, he said. I'm going to hate every minute of it. I'll be imagining him making you laugh, touching your hand, looking at you the way only I should. I felt a shiver run down my spine. But William continued, I'm not going to follow you. I'm not going to make a scene because I trust you. You trust me? You're an honorable woman, Emily. You always have been. If leaving with me is what you truly want, then one night with another man won't change that. I looked at him, moved by the maturity of his response. And what if I decide I want to leave with him? William closed his eyes for a moment, like the question physically hurt. Then I'll have to accept that I missed my chance. There was a vulnerability in his voice that almost made me cancel the dinner right then and there. William, go, he said, stepping back. But Emily, yes? Remember what I told you yesterday. Remember that I want you not out of convenience, not out of duty because you're extraordinary, and I was a fool not to see that sooner. I arrived at Giovanni's with a heart full of conflict. Richard was already there, as elegant as always. Emily, you came, he said, kissing my hand politely. I did, but Richard, we need to talk. Of course, let's sit down. Once we were seated, I got straight to the point. You were right about William. He's in love with me. Richard smiled. And you? How do you feel about that? Confused, scared. But I think I'm in love with him too. Richard nodded like he had expected that answer. Then why are you here with me? I sighed. Because I don't know if I can trust these feelings. 3 years is a long time to be ignored and suddenly told you're loved. But people change. Emily, sometimes it takes almost losing someone to realize what they mean to us. Are you encouraging me to stay with my husband? Richard laughed. I'm being realistic. That man is hopelessly in love with you, and you with him. And you with him. I'm just a catalyst in the story. A catalyst? I'm the one who made William realize how he felt. Without the competition, he might never have woken up to what he had right in front of him. I looked at Richard with new respect. You're a very wise man. And you're a very loved woman. The question is, what will you do with that? While we talked, I didn't notice someone entering the restaurant. William had decided he couldn't stay home, imagining what might be happening. He walked to the bar, ordered a whiskey, and watched from a distance. To his surprise, he didn't see Richard trying to seduce me, but rather a serious conversation between two friends. Excuse me, a voice said next to him at the bar. William turned and saw Richard. Thompson. William, mind if I join you? William gestured to the stool beside him. Emily in the restroom. I thought this was a good chance for us to talk. About the fact that you're a very lucky man. William looked at him puzzled. Your wife is an extraordinary woman, smart, loyal, strong, and completely in love with you. How can you be sure? Because she spent the whole evening talking about you, about how you've changed, how confused she is, and how she's in love and scared all at once. William felt something shift in his chest. She said that? Not in those exact words, but that's what I heard. William, can I give you some advice? Go ahead. Stop being afraid to give yourself fully. She needs to know you won't walk away from her again. William nodded, taking it in. And what about your job offer? Richard smiled. Withdrawn. She belongs at Anderson Enterprises and with you. When I came back from the restroom, I found the two men talking calmly at the bar. What's going on here? I asked, confused. William stood and walked over to me. Richard and I reached an understanding. What kind of understanding? I'm a lucky fool, William said, his eyes locked on mine. And I'm not going to waste a second chance. I looked between the two men. Richard, I'll leave you two to talk, Richard said, grabbing his coat. Emily, it was a pleasure meeting you. William, take good care of her. Once Richard left, I turned to William. What are you doing here? I couldn't stay home picturing you with another man. But you said, I said I trusted you, and I do, but that doesn't mean it was easy. I stepped toward him. William, let's go home, he said gently. We need to talk for real this time. I nodded, and we left the restaurant together. In the car. The tension was thick, but different. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was anticipation. Emily, William said as he drove. When we get home, I'm going to tell you everything. Everything I feel, everything I want, everything I hope for us. I felt my heart race. And what if I said I want to tell you everything too? William glanced at me quickly, then looked back at the road. Then we're in for a very long night. Inside the mansion, William and I stood by the entrance, looking at each other. The air was heavy with tension and anticipation. 3 years of silence were about to be broken forever. Emily, William said gently. Before anything else, there's something I need you to know. What is it? I love you. The words hung between us. I felt tears sting my eyes. William, no. Let me finish, he said, stepping closer to me. I love you in a way I never thought was possible. I fell in love with the strong woman you are, with the grace you showed even when I was cold, with the intelligence I was too blind to see. A tear rolled down my cheek. 3 years, I whispered. 3 years I waited to hear those words. And I'm a fool for taking this long to say them. William reached out and gently touched my face. Emily, I know I don't deserve it, but could you love me too? I looked at him through my tears, seeing real vulnerability in his eyes for the first time. I already love you, I confessed. I think I always did, even when you ignored me. Even when it hurt so much I wanted to give up. William closed his eyes as if my words brought him physical relief. Emily. This time I stepped forward, placing my hands on his face. Kiss me, I whispered. William didn't need another word. He leaned in and kissed me softly at first, then deeper as I responded. It was our first real kiss. In 3 years of marriage, we had never kissed with love, with longing, with the hope of a future together. When we pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. Emily, William whispered against my lips. I want to be your husband truly in every way. I felt my heart race. I want that too. William took my hand and led me upstairs to the bedroom he had never entered before, the master suite. The room was elegant, masculine, but welcoming. I looked around, suddenly nervous. Emily, William said, noticing my hesitation. If you're not ready, it's not that, I said quickly. It's just William. There's something you need to know. What is it? I took a deep breath, trying to gather courage. We never, William frowned, confused. Emily, what are you trying to say? I'm a virgin, I blurted out, the words rushing out. William froze completely, as if struck by lightning. What did you say? I'm a virgin, I repeated, softer this time. William stared at me, clearly in shock. Emily, we're married. On paper, I reminded him. You barely spoke to me, let alone. William ran a hand through his hair, trying to take it in. My God, Emily, you're 25. I know how old I am. But how? Why? I sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling exposed. Before I married you, I was focused on school and work. And after the wedding, well, you made it pretty clear you weren't interested in me. William knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. Emily, I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I never even imagined. How could you? You never asked me anything about my life before the marriage. William closed his eyes, overwhelmed by guilt. Do you hate me? No, I said softly. I don't hate you, but I need you to understand. Tonight, if it happens, it'll be my first time with anyone. William looked at me, something shifting in his expression. Emily, are you sure? I can wait. We can wait. I touched his face. I've waited 3 years to truly be your wife. I don't want to wait any longer. With infinite tenderness, William kissed me again. This time with a reverence I had never known. With patience, care, and love, William turned that night into the most beautiful and intimate experience I could have ever imagined. I woke up to the smell of coffee and something sweet nearby. I slowly opened my eyes and found myself in William's bedroom, now ours, with the morning sun filtering through the curtains. Good morning, my wife, a soft voice said. I turned and saw William walking into the room with a tray full of food. There were fresh croissants, fruit, coffee, orange juice, and even a small rose in a vase. William, I said, sitting up in bed. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, he said, placing the tray down and sitting beside me. I wanted to do something special for the most important woman in my life. I felt my heart warm. It was hard to believe this was the same man who had ignored me for 3 years. How are you feeling? He asked, gently touching my face. Different, I admitted. Complete. William smiled and kissed me gently. I don't regret anything, I said. Neither do I actually. I regret waiting so long. We had breakfast in bed, talking and laughing like we never had before. It felt like two strangers getting to know each other, but with the deep connection of people who had always been close. In the days that followed, I saw a complete change in William. He canceled meetings to be with me, took me to places in Los Angeles I had never seen, and most importantly, he talked to me about everything. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I finally asked the question that had been on my mind. William, why were you so distant before? Even before we got married, people said you were cold. William was quiet for a moment, then sighed. My family, he said at last. I was raised by the Andersons. You know, my father, everything was about business, money, success. My mother, she cared more about appearances than her own children. I turned to face him. I was never taught about love or real relationships. Everything was a transaction, a strategy. When our marriage was arranged, I treated it like any other deal. And now? William took my hand, interlacing our fingers. Now I know I was completely wrong. I've learned that love isn't a weakness. It's the strongest thing there is. Who taught you that? You did, he said, looking me straight in the eyes. Watching your strength, your dignity, your ability to love even when it wasn't returned. I felt tears in my eyes. William, Emily, I know that 3 years of distance don't just go away. I know you're still afraid I'll go back to how I was. It was true. Even with all the changes, part of me still feared it might not last. I am afraid, I admitted. I'm afraid that once the newness fades, you'll start ignoring me again. William turned fully toward me, gently holding my face in his hands. Emily Anderson, look at me. I did. I swear to you, on my life and on our love, that I will never treat you like that again. You've changed who I am at the deepest level. There's no going back. How can I be sure? Because, William said, you're not just a win for me. You're my redemption, my second chance to be the man I should have been from the beginning. In the days that followed, William proved his words with actions. He was present, attentive, protective, but not possessive. When I decided to take on an independent consulting project, he fully supported me. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I'll be working with your competitors sometimes." "I'm sure," William said. "I want you to be happy and fulfilled. Your success is my success." Our physical relationship also deepened. William was patient, affectionate, always making sure I felt loved and respected. Every kiss, every touch, every intimate moment was a confirmation of the love we shared. One night, as we lay together after another evening of closeness, I finally said the words I'd been holding back. "I trust you." William turned to face me. "Really?" "Really, completely, with my heart, my life, and our future." William kissed me deeply. And I promised never to break that trust. I knew he meant it. The cold, distant man I had married 3 years ago was completely gone, replaced by someone who loved me with honesty and intensity. For the first time in 3 years, I felt truly married, truly loved, truly whole. 2 months had passed since William and I had truly begun our marriage. We were happier than we ever thought possible. I had started my consulting work, and William supported me in every project. Our love grew stronger every day. Then, on a Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was organizing some papers in William's office when I found a folder that had fallen behind the desk. Curious, I opened it to see if it contained important documents that needed to be filed. What I saw made me sink into the chair. They were contracts, detailed merger contracts between my parents' company, Peterson Accounting, and Anderson Enterprises. The dates were from 3 years ago, right around the time of our wedding. With trembling hands, I read each page. The agreement was clear. Our marriage would secure the merger of the two companies. The Peterson family would keep 20% of the new business, receive a large cash payment, and William would take full control of operations. "This can't be," I murmured, feeling a wave of nausea rise in my stomach. I kept reading and found something even worse. There were clauses about children, public appearances, and how the marriage had to last at least 5 years to ensure the stability of the merger. I was literally part of a business contract. The door opened and William walked in, smiling when he saw me. "Emily, you won't believe how productive the meeting was." "Emily, are you okay?" I stood up slowly, holding the contracts. "Can you explain this to me?" I asked, my voice strangely calm. William looked at the papers and I saw the color drain from his face. "Emily, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That our marriage was a business contract. That I'm just part of a corporate merger." "It's not like that." "It's not?" I gave a bitter laugh. "It's right here in black and white. Clause 5. The marriage between William Anderson and Emily Peterson will ensure the full acquisition of Peterson Accounting by Anderson Enterprises." William reached out to me, but I stepped back. "Emily, please let me explain the context." "What context?" "You knew this from the beginning." "I knew about the merger, yes, but what?" "Thought I was too stupid to find out? Thought you could use me forever without me ever learning the truth?" "Emily, you're misunderstanding." I threw the contracts onto the table. "Am I?" "Then tell me, William, what part am I misunderstanding? The part where our marriage helped you take over my family's business? Or the part where there are specific clauses about having children?" William ran a hand through his hair, clearly desperate. "Emily, yes, there was a business agreement. But that was before I really knew you. Before I fell in love with you." "Before you fell in love?" I repeated in disbelief. "William, you knew this yesterday when you told me you loved me. You knew it last week when we made love. You knew it through all these months while pretending our relationship was real." "I wasn't pretending. My feelings are real. How can I believe that? How can I trust anything you say when our whole marriage was built on a lie?" I started pacing, my anger and pain building. My parents knew too, didn't they? That's why they pushed the marriage so hard. It wasn't just about paying off debts. It was about selling the family business. William didn't answer, which told me everything. "My God," I whispered. I was sold twice, once to save the debts and again to make sure you got everything. Emily, please. No, I burst out. Don't touch me. Don't tell me you love me. It was all fake. It wasn't fake. What we feel is real. I turned to face him, tears streaming down my face. How can I know what's real? How can I trust anything when I just found out I'm just a piece in some business deal? William took a step toward me. Because you know my heart. You know who I've become with you? Do I? Or are you just a really good actor? The accusation hit William like a punch. Emily, you know that's not true. Do I? 2 hours ago, I thought my husband loved me for who I was. Now I find out he loves me because I made him rich. The company means nothing compared to you. Then give it up, I challenged. If I mean more than the business, undo the merger. Give my family's company back. William hesitated, and that hesitation was all I needed to see. That's what I thought, I said, my voice breaking. When it comes to choosing between me and the money, you choose the money just like 3 years ago. Emily, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, I shouted. Either you love me for who I am, or you love me for what I represent financially. It can't be both. I ran to the bedroom and started packing. William followed. What are you doing? Leaving. I'm going to a hotel. Emily, don't do this. We can fix this. Fix it? I turned to him. How do we fix the fact that our entire marriage was based on a lie? Because what we have now isn't a lie. I stopped folding clothes and looked at him. How can I be sure? How do I know if you've truly changed or if you've just gotten better at pretending? William stayed silent. No answer. That's what I thought, I murmured, zipping up my suitcase. Emily, please don't go. Stay and let's talk. We'll find a way through this. I looked at him one last time, my heart breaking. William, I need time to process all of this. I need to figure out what's real and what's performance. And what if I say I'm not letting you go? I raised my chin with dignity. So, you're going to prove you haven't changed at all? All? That you still think you can control me? William stepped back, realizing that forcing me to stay would only confirm my fears. How long? I don't know. Maybe forever. I picked up my suitcase and walked toward the door. Emily, William called, his voice cracking. I love you. That's real, even if nothing else is. I stopped at the door without turning around. I hope it is, William. Because if it's not, then we've really lost everything. I had been staying in a modest hotel in downtown Los Angeles for a week, 7 days of pain, confusion, and tears. I didn't answer William's calls, didn't reply to his messages, and had told the hotel reception not to share any information about me. I needed time to process everything. The marriage that had finally become real was built on a huge lie. How could I trust anything after that? Meanwhile, William was living through his own nightmare. The mansion felt empty without me. He couldn't eat, barely slept, and couldn't focus at work at all. But it was time to act. I had thrown down a challenge. If he really loved me more than the business, he had to prove it. On Monday morning, William walked into the boardroom at Anderson Enterprises where his father, Robert Anderson, was waiting with the company lawyers. William, you asked for this urgent meeting. What's it about? William placed a folder on the table. I want to undo the merger with Peterson Accounting. The silence in the room was deafening. What did you say? Robert asked in disbelief. I want to return the company to the Peterson family completely. You've lost your mind. That merger is worth $15 million. I know exactly what it's worth, Dad. Robert stood up, clearly angry. William, you can't just undo a 3-year deal on a whim. This isn't a whim. It's the right thing to do. The right thing? You destroyed your marriage over this. William stood up too, looking his father in the eye. I didn't destroy my marriage. You did when you made my wife part of a business deal without telling me the full terms. Terms? William, you knew there were business advantages to the marriage. I knew it would be beneficial, but I didn't know Emily was literally part of the contract. I didn't know there were clauses about children, about how long we had to stay married. One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mr. Anderson, technically undoing the merger is possible, but it would cost a fortune in legal fees and settlements. I don't care what it costs, William interrupted. Make it happen. Robert grabbed his son's arm. William, think about what you're doing. $15 million, the company's reputation. William pulled away. Dad, my whole life you taught me that money was the most important thing. That business comes before everything. But you were wrong. What do you mean wrong? Emily is worth more than $15 million. She's worth more than the whole company. She's worth more than anything I have or will ever have. Robert shook his head. You're being irrational, emotional. I'm being human, something you never taught me to be. William turned to the lawyers. I want you to prepare all the necessary documents. Peterson Accounting goes back to David and Sarah Peterson. Any money they received as part of the deal, let them keep it. Consider it compensation for the 3 years. William, Robert tried to argue. The decision's made. Dad, I'm going to win my wife back and I'm going to do it the right way this time. William left the room, determined. He had one stop to make before going after me. David and Sarah Peterson were having coffee in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Sarah went to answer and was surprised to see William standing there. William, what a surprise. Please come in. William stepped in and found David in the living room. David, Sarah, I need to talk to you about something important. Of course. Have a seat. Would you like some coffee? No, thank you. William took a breath. I want to give your company back. David and Sarah exchanged a confused look. What do you mean give it back? Peterson Accounting, I want to cancel the merger and return everything to you. But why? Sarah asked. Because I found out that Emily learned about the terms of the deal, about how the marriage was part of the business arrangement. David let out a deep sigh. We were afraid that day would come. You should have told her from the beginning. We know, Sarah said, her eyes filling with tears. But we were desperate. The death, the possibility of David going to jail. I understand the circumstances, William said. But Emily feels betrayed by all of us. And she's right. Where is she? David asked. In a hotel. She hasn't spoken to me in a week. Sarah started to cry. We lost our daughter because of our greed. You didn't lose her, William said firmly. But we need to make this right. That's why I'm giving everything back. Emily needs to know she matters more than any business deal. William, David said, are you sure? This must mean millions for your company. I'm absolutely sure. Without Emily, none of it means anything. William stood up. The lawyers will contact you about the legal details. I want everything finalized by the end of the week. After William left, David and Sarah sat in silence, trying to process what had just happened. He really loves her, Sarah murmured. Yes. The question is, will it be enough? I was in the hotel room trying to read a book when I suddenly felt a wave of nausea. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited violently. Once it passed, I sat on the bathroom floor, trying to make sense of what was happening. I had been feeling strange for days, tired, nauseous, emotional. Then a terrifying thought crossed my mind. It can't be, I whispered. I looked at the calendar on my phone. My period was late, very late. With trembling hands, I got dressed and left the hotel. At the nearest pharmacy, I bought 3 different pregnancy tests. Back in the room, I took all 3 and waited through the longest minutes of my life. Positive, positive. I sat on the bed, staring at the tests, and began to cry. I wasn't sure if it was from joy, fear, or complete despair. I was pregnant with William's child, the man I loved but no longer fully trusted. The man who had lied to me about the foundation of our marriage. How could I raise a child in the middle of all this confusion? How could I make decisions about my future when I didn't even know if my marriage was real or just part of a deal? I picked up my phone, typed William's number, but couldn't bring myself to press call. What would I even say? How would I explain? Instead, I sent a simple message. I need to talk to you. It's important. His reply came within seconds. Where? I looked around the impersonal hotel room where I'd been hiding for a week. In our room at home. 1 hour. I needed familiar ground for this conversation because after it, nothing would be the same again. I was pregnant, and that changed absolutely everything. I arrived at the Anderson mansion with my heart racing. My hands shook as I unlocked the door with the key I had never returned. The house was quiet, but I could feel William's presence somewhere inside. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step echoing in the empty hallway. I entered the bedroom we had shared in recent months, the room where we had discovered love, where we had truly become husband and wife. I sat on the edge of the bed, the 3 pregnancy tests hidden in my purse. How would I tell him? How would I explain I was carrying the child of a man I no longer fully trusted? The sound of the Porsche pulling into the driveway made me stand. William was home. A few minutes later, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. The door opened and he appeared, looking exhausted, but his eyes lit up when he saw me. Emily, he said softly, you came back. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I began to cry. All the emotions of the past week, the betrayal, the pain, the fear, and now the pregnancy hit me all at once. Emily, what is it? William rushed to me, kneeling by the bed. Please tell me what's going on. I sobbed uncontrollably, my body shaking. William hesitated, then wrapped his arms around me, holding me against his chest. It's okay, he whispered, stroking my hair. I'm here. We'll get through this. No, William, I managed between sobs. It's not okay. Nothing is okay. Tell me what I can do. Anything. I pulled away from him and wiped my tears. There's something I have to tell you. Something that changes everything. William felt a knot in his stomach. What is it? I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. First, I need you to tell me something and be honest with me. Anything. What did you do about the merger? About my parents' company? William looked me in the eyes. I called it off. Peterson Accounting goes back to your parents next week. They can keep the money they received. I blinked, surprised. You really did that? I did. $15 million, Emily. I gave it all back. Why? William took my hands in his. Because you're worth more than any amount of money. Because I want you to know my love for you has nothing to do with business. I began to cry again, but this time they were tears of relief. William, Emily, I know I've made terrible mistakes. I know I should have told you everything about the agreement from the beginning, but my feelings for you are real. You've completely changed my life. I looked at him, seeing nothing but honesty in his eyes. I believe you, I whispered. Really? Really? And now I need to tell you something that will change our lives forever. William held his breath. I reached into my purse and pulled out the 3 pregnancy tests, placing them on the bed between us. I'm pregnant, William. William stood completely still, staring at the tests. Then he looked at me, then back at the tests. Pregnant, he repeated, like he couldn't quite grasp the word. Yes, I found out today. Suddenly, William pulled me into his arms and kissed me with a passion that surprised me. When we pulled apart, he was crying. Emily, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. I love you so much, and I already love this baby too. I felt my heart fill with warmth. You do, even after everything? Especially because of it, William said, placing a hand on my still flat stomach. This baby will be born from real love, not a contract. This is our new beginning. I fell into his arms, finally allowing myself to feel joy. Now it's just the 3 of us, William whispered into my hair. A real family. A real family, I repeated, smiling through my tears. 6 months later, I was glowing in my white wedding dress, my 6-month baby bump perfectly nestled in the soft fabric. This time, I had chosen every detail: the dress, the flowers, the music. This time I was marrying for love. The ceremony was held in the garden of the Anderson estate, decorated with white roses and soft lights. The guests were few, only close family and true friends. William stood waiting at the altar, looking perfect in his tuxedo, tears in his eyes as he watched me walk toward him. "Today," the officiant said, "William and Emily renew their vows, not out of duty or a deal, but out of true love." "Emily," William said, taking my hands, "3 years ago I married you out of convenience. Today, I marry you because I can't imagine life without you. You've taught me what love is. You've taught me how to be human." I smiled, tears running down my own cheeks. "William, you've shown me that true love is worth waiting for, that people can change, that second chances are real. I promise to love you and our child forever." When we kissed, the guests clapped. But I could only hear my heart beating in sync with William's. 1 year later, I looked out the window of the small office we now shared in downtown Los Angeles. The sign on the door read, "Anderson and Peterson International Consulting," the company we had started together with our own savings. We had started small, but in just 1 year, we already had 15 employees and contracts in 3 countries. I focused on emerging markets. William handled corporate strategy. We were the perfect team. "How's our little CEO?" William asked, walking into the office holding our 3-month-old son. I smiled and took the baby from his arms. David William Anderson had his father's blue eyes and his mother's sweet smile. "He's perfect," I said, kissing the baby's forehead. "Just like his mom," William whispered, kissing me softly. My parents had received a generous sum when the merger was undone enough to start over comfortably. Peterson Accounting was thriving again, now run by David with renewed energy. "Do you ever regret it?" William asked, as he sometimes did. "Staying with me after everything." I looked at my husband, our son, and the company we had built together. "Never," I said firmly. "You've proven that true love is worth more than any amount of money." William hugged me, holding the 3 of us close.